In this session, we are going to look at Agile now and try to determine if the Agile development is right for us. We have covered the roots, methodology, principles, some methods, frameworks. Now let's try to decide if we are ready or what we need to consider for Agile. We look at the assessment, support required, any policies and procedures, the team composition and the knowledge required, the physical environment for the team, some of the methods, and then tools and techniques. So for a successful Agile project, we need to consider management. Management, especially executive team, have to be supportive of this effort. They must understand what it takes to be Agile. If this is the first time Agile is attempted, a learning curve, slow progress, some problems may be encountered, and management gets anxious when this happens. If management is committed, then we also need customer interaction. Same thing with the customer. They have to understand that they will be working inside a team environment. And we will require at least one customer on site. And they will be part of the developers, the team, the Scrum manager, if you're using Scrum. But they have to be co-located. That means they cannot be worried about what happens back home in the office. The organizational structure. This means the facilities, the building, the staff that is going to support the Agile. You need policies and procedures, documentation, development procedures. If you are under ISO registration, the policies, procedures, the way you do business may be impacted. Also, tools and techniques, coding standards, source control tools, build, automation tools, training. If you bring new tools to the environment, don't forget the training portion. Finally, the team must fit into this environment. The team must be trained in the principles of Agile. So before we start, you have to conduct an assessment. Are you ready for Agile? If this is the first time the team has experienced Agile, you may want to start with a pilot project, some training. You may have to change the way the team works. You have to find team members that are comfortable with Agile concepts. If the policies and procedures have a heavy emphasis on upfront documentation, Agile may not be for you. Do you have the technical knowledge? Is the team ready? Is the environment ready? If your environment is such that every developer has a separate office, they may resent to be placed back in an open environment. Do the tools support XP? Are they automated? The supporting functions, are they available? Especially IT. You need IT support to practice Agile development. The facilities may require reconfiguration. Remember, pair programming is a key component of Agile. If you decide to use 2 monitors, you need a computer that has at least 2 monitor ports or support dual monitors. We saw this before. Agile is not a good idea for a project that is going to fail. If the project is in trouble, don't try Agile. If you have a single release, don't try it. If the management or your customer, either one, is not comfortable, this is not going to work. In all older estimation techniques like COCOMO, lines of code was used to measure progress, to estimate how many lines of code are you going to generate. And then the lines of code measured progress. If that is the culture in your organization, this is not going to work. Many developers dispersed throughout the world, it's not a good idea to use XP. There are other methodologies that use lean development techniques, but XP is not a good idea. And we mentioned before, if you have an exponential learning curve, you cannot do that. Maybe later on technology will allow us to do pair programming with distributed people in different countries looking at the same monitor side by side. Until then, it's not a good idea to have Agile for developers that are not co-located or where the customer is not co-located. So let's talk about executive level support. If your upper management doesn't believe in XP, it's not going to work. You need a sponsor that is willing to take problems to the executive team to resolve issues. A champion that believes in XP. This person is the one that goes and brings problems to the executive team and ensures that the resources are allocated, that the risks are taken care of. You need a mentor, somebody that knows what to do, especially if this is your very first Agile development. Between the sponsor, the champion, and the mentor, your team will grow. The SMEs, subject matter experts. These are the people that know the business. In cases where there's ambiguity, they'll provide the expertise. While your customer may know the business case, subject matter experts may help you in networking, communications, database, web services, web development, techniques, and so on. While they're not members of the development team, they should be available to the development team. In today's complex environment, it's very difficult for developers to know everything there is to know about programming, networking, communications, database programming, protocols, tools. You need infrastructure support and tools, including training. Between infrastructure and tools, we're talking about computers, hardware, software tools, configuration tools, and people to train the team. Another area of interest is the policies and procedures for the organization. If the organization is ISO registered, Agile development may require changes to processes and procedures, and that may violate the intent of the ISO certification. If you have contractual requirements that require upfront documentation before coding starts, that has to be taken into account. Any source control procedures. If you have an environment where developers are not allowed to integrate code, this may create a problem. Your coding standards have to be updated, and your development methodologies, legacy procedures, including the quality management system, may require some modifications. Your team, we mentioned the sponsor. Now we need a product and project managers. Developers that are comfortable with the XP concepts. Quality assurance and testing may resent the fact that testing is done by the development team. If you have people that are involved in the requirements definition, they may not be comfortable with the XP. Architecture people may not understand the metaphor concept. You will need a coach, and finally, the customer. The customer may have to be trained in the XP concepts. A coach is very important. The coach has to understand Agile development, and we prefer to have somebody that has been through a few development projects in the XP. The coach should understand the status and take action when changes may be required. It may find that something is not being done right, so the coach should be able to propose alternative approaches. The coach can help to prioritize tasks, resolve conflict, and it requires good communication skills. Now, the term coach is used in Scrum as the Scrum Master and the product owner. So the coach is actually two people if you're using Scrum. The two are not mutually exclusive. The responsibilities remain the same. The on-site customer must be co-located. should be able to answer questions, make decisions. If there is conflict between two stories, the customer should be able to take action and resolve them. When asked, should be able to assign priorities to some of the stories. The customer working on site should be able to look at the application and see how it fits in production. The customer should not have any other activities back at his or her office, so should be dedicated to the team for the duration of the project. This is sometimes the most difficult part to obtain customer commitment for the duration of the project. So what do we need to know in a programming environment? Software development training is essential. If your developers are trained in traditional methodologies, XP training will be required. They should know their programming language of choice. They should know what programming language is going to be used in this team. Sometimes it's multiple languages, protocols, procedures. They should understand how to build and test code, and they should be able to create test cases. Sometimes for a developer, the most difficult part of XP is the creation of a test case. Typically, developers trivialize the test. In XP, they have to create the test case before they code. Finally, the methodology. What is the process that we are going to follow in Agile? They have to understand it. They have to allow other people to provide constructive criticism on their code, especially when there is a better way of implementing the code. They have to understand the code has to be checked in before it's implemented and tested. Other soft skills. If developers cannot work in the team, they don't belong in XP. Effective, honest communication is essential. Some analytical thinking and a positive attitude are required. Effective communication requires some tact. There are different ways of telling somebody that there's a better way of doing it. You don't say you're stupid. You say, have you considered this? The idea is to provide a better way of implementing the function. Listening. If you ask, be prepared to listen. You have to be focused on what we are delivering to the customer. And quality should be job one. Let's talk about the environment. We're going to look at the team area, how to implement pair programming, and the implication on stations, how to manage the storyboard or the stories, where the status board should be placed. We'll look at the release plan and a workspace. So team areas, you'll have tables, open areas where you can communicate. The board should be centered somewhere in the team environment. This is an example of a sprint backlog. Instead of using 3x5 cards, they're using stickies. If you do this approach, make sure humidity doesn't affect how well you place those stickies on the board. This is a typical area where all the developers are working around in the same big room. For pair programming, you got stations with two monitors. When one is typing, the other one is commenting, providing some feedback. Notice they're in close proximity. One developer is looking at the code and offering suggestions to the other developer. Multiple pairs are working on the same iteration. For your stations, they could be in separate rooms, but easily accessible to the other team members. They don't have to have the same type of equipment. A laptop and an external monitor is okay. Ideally, you'll have two monitors, where both of them see the same image. The story cards, 3x5s, like we said before, they're not kept electronically. Another view of the status board. It could be on a wall, close to the end of the working stations, or it could be on a whiteboard. To plan the workspace, some facility adjustments may be required, where one area has to account for at least 2 people in every workstation. This is an example of the 787 environment by Boeing. They have the actual final product, the plane. You got engineers all around it. And if you look at the bottom, it's pair programming, side by side. The customer is all around them. So for the methodology, we have 12 practices. To select the process, there are different methods: XP, Scrum, Scrum and XP, ADP, DSDM, Crystal, and others. Tools and techniques: most of the time XP and Scrum work hand in hand. You need the same tools that we've been talking about: prototyping, configuration management, automated build, tracking, and automated unit and regression test. We cover the practices: pair programming, 40-hour week, coding standards. Remember, coding standards are mandatory and should be enforced. It should be adopted voluntarily by the team. JAD is used at the beginning of the XP, and the tools don't change. They're the same for all the other Agile methodologies. So in this session, we looked at how to assess if we are ready for XP, the support required, what impact it has on policies and procedures. We described the team composition, what's required as far as the knowledge, environment, methodology, and we found out that the tools and techniques are very similar to other Agile methodologies. I would like to thank Visible Systems Corporation for their support and vision in the preparation of this material. In addition, we owe immense gratitude to the people that preceded us. People like Beck, Beam, Bush, Cockburn, DeMarco, Hicksmith, Jacobson, Martin, Morris, Palmer, Poppendick, Royce, Rumbaugh, Stapleton, Schwaber. These people, along with Jordan, prepared the basics for this material. Other industry and government standards helped us prepare this: MIL standards, NASA and Department of Energy standards, ANSI, European Space Agency standards, IEEE, and ISO standards. Without them, this material will not be possible.